southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I ought to slow down, standing in the pouring rain.
What's going on, guys? This is Tristan and Tony with the Zero Duck 30 podcast. Tony, why don't you introduce a special guest we have on today from the state of Arkansas?
What is going on, everybody? And yes, we have two special guests this time, and something very cool that we're covering today. First of all, we have Dr. Jenn Ballard. She's the AGFC State Wildlife Veterinarian and Assistant Chief of Wildlife Research. And this is Jen's second appearance on the show. Thank you again, Jenn.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And then we're super excited. If y'all haven't heard yet, there's a new AGFC State Waterfowl Coordinator, and his name is Mr. Brett Leach. Brett, thank you for coming on the show with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you, Brett.
Awesome, and congratulations on the new position. Is this something you'd been working towards, or what did you do before that? If you wouldn't mind, just I don't want to spend a whole lot of time getting into your background. We can get you on later for that, but just how you got into the position and what you're excited about accomplishing there.
Yeah, so I mean it's been a long time coming. So I went to the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, graduated from there in 2015, and I've been kind of hopping around working different technician jobs, like all focused on around waterfowl. So I ended up working from the breeding grounds up in like North Dakota all the way down to the wintering grounds in Louisiana. Wow. And I ended up doing my master's up in Missouri on blue-winged teal, and that ended up leading to this position here down in Arkansas.
That is pretty cool. Just as a side note, we love our blue-winged teal since we do a lot of our duck hunting in Florida. And they hang out all year.
Yep. We even have a decal that says blue-winged teal purist. So we love that bird. We might have to be hitting you up on some biological information on those birds. Cool deal. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And to guys and gals, what we're covering today is basically these guys are doing a cool new study, and it's exciting, and it's also an important new study that they're comparing different tracking devices on mallards. And I first saw the post online just because I follow Jenn, I follow AGFC and see what's going on, and as soon as I saw veterinarians cutting on duck bellies, I was like, ooh, what's going on here? So anyway, Brett and Jenn were nice enough to take time out of their day today to spend some time with us to help us all learn a little bit more about this study. Can you guys kind of jump into that and kind of give an overview of what you guys are looking to accomplish and what the study's all about?
Yeah, so we've been putting transmitters on duck species for many years, and we really don't fully know like what the impact is on like the behavior that those different devices may have. And obviously, like, when you start looking at some of the research questions that we're trying to answer, like we want to make sure that those results aren't biased at all just because of the devices that we're putting on. So yeah, we end up putting a total of, I guess, 96 GPS GSM transmitters on female mallards through Missouri. And then we end up putting geolocators out as well. And I think we end up getting just over 300 of those out this season.
Wow.
Goodness. Wow. That is, that's a lot of work for sure. Goodness gracious. So what are you guys looking, so when we guys get into this a little bit further in detail, before we do that, Jenn, you know, I know Brett, you just did, but Jenn, could you give everybody a little bit of your background and what you do as your role there as a wildlife veterinarian and assistant chief of wildlife research, please?
Sure. So my background, I went to Arkansas Tech. I have a bachelor's in fish and wildlife management, and then went to veterinary school, got a pretty classical veterinary training. And then I also went over to the University of Georgia and got a graduate degree in population health, essentially. And so my work centers around diagnosing and managing diseases in free-ranging wildlife, but also working with biologists like Brett to make sure we're managing our populations for overall population health. And that's kind of the big picture of what I do. But behind the scenes, one of my other roles is what I refer to as veterinary technical support. So when there's projects like this where veterinary skills are helpful, but we're not necessarily asking a disease or health related question directly, they just they need my hands, to do something that I've been trained to do, like in this case, surgery. I provide that sort of handling expertise and some welfare suggestions at times, anesthesia at times, and surgery. So my background in grad school was actually studying duck viruses. So being able to kind of come back and work with waterfowl again is really a dream, because for me, it's kind of home base.
Awesome stuff. Well, and I didn't have anything about this on the outline, but I'll tell you something that just came to mind that I think it was Dr. Brad Cohen had shared at one point, or I can't remember who we had, but we were talking about state agencies and the folks like y'all that are out there doing these different positions and how important they are. It's very important that us as duck hunters, as outdoor enthusiasts, however you want to look at it, that we don't play coach from the stands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the things that he made a good point about was that the folks that are doing these jobs for the state agencies love what they do. That's why they're doing it, and they have the best outlook for all of us and nature. We're selfish as hunters, I think, but you guys take a much bigger picture of that. And so I just wanted to applaud you guys for what you guys do, because I think there's too many of us that can sit back at the sidelines and complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that, because sometimes, you do take a lot of hard knocks working in the field, but of course, we all get into this because we love it. I'm an avid hunter. My whole family hunts, and we live a very sort of field to table lifestyle. So that's very much something that I love, and a reason that, drives and motivates me professionally.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times, with your guys' fields, it's being, the wildlife is being looked at from a ecosystem, you're looking at waterfowl, for example, and there's not just ducks, there's different types of waterfowl, and how is that going to affect the fish? And then you're working with the fish people, and it just goes down the rabbit hole. And, a lot of people from the sidelines look at what they should be doing this for the ducks or whatever, but it's not just the ducks. There's a lot of other animals. I know you guys are all working with these other, agencies to, benefit.
Well, I think a great example of that is just, was it Karen Nishke that we had on? Yeah. And she's also in charge of the gators for Georgia. And, we told her we was out teal hunting. We were like, no kidding. We were in this specific WMA, and we told her we saw like 60, 70 heads of gators when we shined the lights up when we got set up in the morning. And she was like, that's awesome. We were like, no, it's not. But there's a bigger picture there. That's for sure, Tristan. And, but yeah, give a shout out to those guys, in your state agencies. But, so let's drill down into this study a little bit. So, first of all, you guys are partnered up with several other agencies and partners. Can you kind of give them a shout out right now and kind of talk about who else is involved with this with you guys?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of partners involved on this project. So obviously there's Arkansas Game and Fish, Missouri Department of Conservation, the University of Arkansas Monticello, the Five Oaks Ag Research Center, Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, Bass Pro Shop, the Osage Basin Collective, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So, yeah, they're all contributing either financially, administratively, or just offering their expertise to really be able to pull this project together.
Very cool. That is awesome. And I may put the cart before the horse here, but, I just can't imagine what it takes for somebody to put something like that together. Folks, if you're listening to this, it's not just like everybody was having breakfast one day and said, hey, let's do this. And they just showed up all together. There's a lot of planning that goes into this, a lot of approval of funds that can take sometimes months, if not years, at times, grants and things that are involved. So, who, when you guys do something like this, is this something that one person kind of, is the captain of the ship, so to speak, and kind of helps build this all together? Is it something you guys just do collectively?
I mean, it takes like a lot of coordination, just like collectively like working together to be able to pull it off, especially in these projects where there might not be like quite as long of a timeline. Everybody's got different parts of the project that they're assigned to be able to complete and just be able to pull it all together.
Kind of that old phrase about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So we each sort of took a piece and ran with our piece, and it fortunately all came together.
That's awesome.
Now, can you guys go into a little bit about, what, when you're putting the study together, go into, what kind of data you guys are hoping to gather from having all these birds, monitored. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess like for that part of the project, but we're really relying on Doug Osborne at the University of Arkansas Monticello. So he's kind of leading the transmitter portion of the project, pull all that data together. Mm-hmm. So we're having either a postdoc or grad student working on the project to really be able to analyze like what these different effects are for these transmitters. So, I mean, they'll be looking at different aspects such as like the timing of migration, I guess like breeding propensity, and just like generally like how far these birds are moving and the use of stopover sites. Like, are these birds stopping at these stopovers and spending more time there because they need to rest and refuel? So it's like the aerodynamics of the transmitter.
As waterfowlers, we experience all kinds of extreme weather conditions. Stay bone dry and warm with Frog Togs hunting gear. You can check them out at frogtogs.com or at frogtogshunt on Instagram.
The bird's back, like it may not, it may like end up affecting the bird more, where they may have to make those longer stops. So I guess just really relying on Doug for that portion of the project.
Now, is that the main function of this study, is to so you guys like can zero out and say, hey, this is the best for the bird and this is what we're getting the most yield out of this device? Because I know there's a couple different devices that you guys are talking about. Or is it, that we're looking to gain this migratory information? Is it kind of both? Am I gathering that right?
I mean, I guess overall, the big thing would just be looking at the impact that these transmitters may have on these different questions that we may be trying to answer. So I guess we've got like the 4 different attachment methods that we're going to be looking at. So we've got 2 methods. That's going to be a backpack style transmitter. One's just going to have just a double loop method. So one elastic band goes around its belly, and then another band goes around, sits on the furcula of the bird, so it sits in front of the wings. So it's basically just resting on that wishbone. And then we're doing a single loop method where it crisscrosses across the bottom of the bird, and then we end up just tying with a single knot. So obviously there's less that can go wrong there when you only have one knot holding the unit together. But yeah, so I guess, and then you start looking at the implants. Obviously there's not going to be the aerodynamic portion to that. And then we've got the geolocators, which provides pretty rough data, but it offers like a really good control group for all these different transmitters that we're trying to compare.
Understood. Okay. So how does, like, for example, explain to everybody out there, how does a geolocator work? I know some of these use like cell phone towers, I think you guys were saying. And can you talk about like what is measuring, or how those devices, what data they're using to do what they do?
Yeah, so both the backpack and the implant can be GPS transmitters. So it's going to be taking latitude, longitude locations up to like 10-meter accuracy. And then all those, like that data is stored on the device. And it's programmed to check in once per day. So if it's within range of a cell tower, it's going to be able to transmit all that data through the cell tower. And then we're able to online control panel, look at where the birds are at, download the data, and all of that. But when you start looking at the geolocator, it's going to end up using the amount of daylight throughout the day. That basically ends up telling you like the latitude that bird is at, and then it ends up using solar noon to figure out what that longitude is. So like when that sun is at the highest point throughout the day, and then just using that, we're able to get a rough estimate of where that bird is actually located. And it's, typically within about 100 kilometers. So it's pretty rough data that you get from a geolocator. And then to actually get the data off of those, we really rely on the hunters for that portion. So just making sure that people are reporting their bans, like reportban.gov. That way we know that these birds are being harvested. And the geolocators, they've got a tarsal band that they're connected to. And there's going to be a phone number on there. So if you are one of the lucky hunters to be able to shoot one of these birds, like, please give that number a call. And that way we're able to get the device back in hand, because those ones we actually have to plug into the computer to retrieve all that data.
And just along with the, incentive for hunters to do that back, isn't it true that you guys will actually there's people that'll make like a replica of that? So it's like, if people are worried about like, hey, I don't want to give this call the transmitter in because then I lose it type thing. That might be a dumb question, but it's just something I thought of. Is there companies that can make like a replica for taxidermy purposes on birds?
Yeah, so we'll actually provide replicas in exchange for the unit. Obviously, like these backpacks, we're able to redeploy on another bird. But yeah, so we've got replicas that we can exchange for you for that. And then like the geolocators, once we get that data off that unit itself, we'll just send that unit right back to you.
Now, Brett, let me ask you this. And this is something I didn't have in the outline, but it's very applicable to this. Is there multiple birds with multiple devices on them, or are you doing like one device per bird?
So we're only doing one device per bird. So each bird gets one transmitter type, and then just a standard aluminum leg band as well.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Because I was just thinking about this war eagle flying through the sky. It's got all this hardware.
Yeah.
But in reality, though, so many times these birds are, ounces are important. And so how much does like the heaviest device weigh?
Yeah, good question. So the backpack transmitters, those are going to be 20-gram units, and then the implants are going to be 25-gram units. And then when we're putting these devices out, we've got certain rules that we have to follow. So we can't exceed 3% of the bird's body mass. And then obviously the geolocators, it's just attached to that small tarsal band. So, it only weighs a gram. So that's why it offers us a really good control group for us to compare to the other transmitter types.
Gotcha. And now what's the kind that I saw in the picture where you guys were cutting open the belly and inserting a transmitter into the belly? What's that one?
So that would be the implant transmitter.
Okay.
So what I did there was, and veterinarians around the country have done these, and some biologists as well, but basically you just do a small surgical incision on the abdomen of the bird, and that whole transmitter actually tucks up inside the bird's body, and we use a device to poke a very small hole out through the skin and its back to let the antenna come out. So
wow.
The procedure was actually invented in, I think, the late 80s to early 90s, maybe before that, but those are some of the earliest publications I could find. And it was initially invented for diving ducks, and especially sea ducks like eiders, that are diving meters and meters down to feed on the ocean floor. Researchers knew right off the bat they weren't going to be able to attach something to the back of those birds and still have them sort of function normally. So it was this this sort of balancing between what was invasive up front and what was necessary for the long-term well-being of the bird. But what we're finding now is that even though it seems more invasive at the beginning, the birds are responding really well. They're recovering very quickly, and they're making great movements after that. And so, as we learn more and as the technologies advance, we may find that while we knew it was necessary for diving ducks, it might actually end up being a better procedure for dabbling ducks as well. All of it is kind of balancing the upfront invasiveness versus the long-term effect versus the technology, as it advances and things get smaller and battery lives get better. It's a constant evolution of balancing those things.
Do you want coffee that doesn't suck? Get the Duck. Dirty Duck coffee is made specifically for the waterfowl enthusiast. Enjoy flavors like Morning Wood, Dark Dynasty, Cinnamon Teal Snickerdoodle, and First Flight to unlock the flavor that you'll enjoy in the blind for years to come. Our friends at Dirty Duck Coffee Company are now offering all Zero Duck 30 followers a 15% discount when you use code ZeroDuck15 on your next order.
And also cost, because certain satellite transmitters, you have to pay ongoing data fees all the time versus having hunters return something or bouncing information off of existing cell phone towers. So there's a lot of factors to really optimize the way to collect this data.
Interesting. Now,
super interesting.
Yeah. So that specific one, what kind of data transmission does that use, or what? How does that work?
So my understanding is that one collects the GPS location information and stores it. And then when it's in range of a suitable cell tower, it dumps all of the information at once. Brett, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right.
He's nodding. So it can go long periods of time. If it's out of cell service, it's just storing the data and you maybe don't know what's happening. But when it gets back to cell tower range, it dumps all of it at once. So you can get weeks or even months of data sort of backlogged. So there's a delay in getting it, but it's really cost effective because it doesn't constantly go back and forth to a satellite.
Gotcha. So, and this is kind of something we were going to talk about, but I think it's applicable now, is that you're testing all these different devices. And I mean, me, just topically, what I've learned a little bit about the backpack type GPS transmitters and this, to me, it seems like that these ones that you embed are more of a no-brainer. I mean, is that where the technology has moved to? So it's gotten smaller, better, last longer type of thing, or does one have a feature or benefit over the other one?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's what this study's about is learning. Brett, you add to that?
I was just going to say, like, each one of these transmitters, there's going to be benefits and trade-offs to each style, and it's just going to really depend on the question that you're trying to answer.
Gotcha.
And then I would mention is that we have to repeat this for each species because different species may respond differently to different transmitters. They may be more sensitive to the initial invasiveness of the handling or the surgery. Whereas, these mallards, they're doing great and we're already watching them migrate. So we kind of have to ask those questions again for each species.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now, how long does a typical battery last? I mean, if one's better than the other, please go ahead and mention that. But like, what's the standard life of some of these batteries that are going on these devices?
Yeah, so with the GPS, GSM backpacks, those are going to be a solar powered unit. And because of that, we're able to extend the battery life on that. So we're getting 2 to 3 years worth of data typically on each of these birds with those units. Whereas the implant transmitters, you're typically limited to about 10 to 14 months worth of data. And then with the geolocators, you're going to get about 2 years worth of data up to on those.
Okay. All right. Yes. I mean, there's a direct example of how one benefit could be better than the other, so interesting. How long have you guys set a time limit to say, this is how long we want to watch this go on and study this data, and this is when we're going to stop and pull everything together, and I'm sure you'll be doing stuff along the way, but is there like a timeline on the study?
So I guess we don't really necessarily have like a hard deadline or anything right now.
Gotcha.
I guess kind of like you said, like we'll just continually be watching these birds and starting like getting the data analysis rolling. And we've got plans to go at least one more year at the study, and then at the end of that, and we'll probably end up going through like the following fall, just making sure we really get all that migration data, and then just really compile it all together at the end of that time.
Gotcha. And maybe I'll be out of line by asking, but one thing that we love, and we were talking about Dr. Bradley Cohen again, and he's got the Cohen Wildlife Lab, is that they share a lot of these stories, of the things that they find. Like he had one on the other day that was doing all of its feeding over on a train track where a car or the train cars would dump feed over on accident, I guess. And this mallard picked up on it and had all this GPS location going back and forth from the refuge over to the train tracks of all places, So is that something that you guys are prepared to do? Or is that something you guys are more going to keep internal as far as that stuff goes?
Yeah, I guess most of the stuff that you would see coming from this study would likely just be posted on Doug Osborne's Instagram page for the Osborne Lab.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, otherwise, most of it's going to end up being more so internally.
Sure.
Yeah, the Five Oaks Ag Research Center is a training program for people who want to become waterfowl specialists, and it's based out of, the Five Oaks. It's a waterfowl hunting lodge, and they have a research center there, and they let us use that for doing the actual surgical procedure. And so if folks want to follow this research, a lot of it will appear there. That's Doug's group. And then, I think Dr. Cohen and I we overlapped at Georgia in grad school, and we both, I think, have very similar thoughts on science communication. The research that we're doing, we've got to get that information out to the public, because the science that happens behind the scenes, it almost doesn't count. It helps us, but it doesn't engender the trust of our constituents. So I'm very much on the same page with Dr. Cohen that it's important to communicate these things.
Yeah, I mean, I know just from us personally, with us here with Zero Duck 30 and just personal friends and things like that, we've watched some of those. I mean, it's like everybody we know now follows that kind of stuff, and we're just like sponges for it because we're such addicts, So awesome stuff. So how will you guys process the data? And when I say actually process it, is this data go into computers, use AI technology? Is it throw it out on a spreadsheet? How are you, outside of looking at a map, how are you guys processing the data?
Yeah, so that's going to end up falling back on some of these researchers that are going to be working on the project. So like when you go on the online control panel and like with the geolocators, you're able to just download like a CSV file. So it's going to have all the data.
Our partners at Huntwise are offering an exclusive discount for Zero Duck 30 followers. As an elite member, some of the features you'll immediately gain access to are Huntcast, Windcast, peak kill times, property lines, owner information and phone lookup, 250 map layers, unlimited offline maps, 3D maps, social media, and on top of it all, save up to 50% off some of the top hunting brands in the industry. Download and explore the #1 hunting tool set today and save 20% by using code DUCK30.
That those units are collecting. And then from there, it's just coding exercises. So like a lot of researchers are using the program R and just, run all the different models on the data. I
got you. Okay, cool. So, I mean, is there anything that we haven't covered so far that 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 you guys think is important to note about this study? I mean, because one thing's for sure is we talked about is having you guys back on at a later date. Maybe I think you were saying, Brett, like maybe mid-season or something like that, so that we can really look at what some of these ducks are doing. Because I think, isn't there a website that's called like trackashark.com or something like that, where you can log in and just see where Sheila the shark is at right now? I think all of us are entertained by that, to be able to see duck named subject Fred, that he does this with his life and et cetera. So I know you guys said you'd be nice enough to come back on here again, and we can kind of update our folks about that, so y'all can look forward to that. But any closing remarks from you guys that we didn't cover today?
Well, I would just emphasize again the partnership and how it's a huge challenge to bring a project of this magnitude together. And it can't happen just with, one agency or one person. It's got to be a partnership. And we're so grateful for the partners that made this happen, and that can help with this large scale landscape level research, because that's what we need to really inform management. So I think that's what I would just emphasize, is the importance of those research partnerships.
Yeah. And I think and to piggyback on that, I think it's important that everybody listening to this, if you're one of these naysayers that sit back and go, I'm not giving Ducks Unlimited any of my money, what does AGFC get out of my hunting license? What about these non-resident fees and blah, 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 and I pay my taxes, and y'all, this is what goes on. But in order to understand those things, you have to get involved. You have to get on your state websites, see what they're doing, see what's going on, and follow these folks like, Jenn and Brett, and follow what they're doing, because if you really care that much and you're not just a complainer, you should be excited about what all these folks are doing. Because to me, I think it's killer to see the way technology is progressing and what we're learning about what everybody calls the dumbest, smartest bird on the planet. I mean, it's sure. There's so much more to learn about their behaviors and why they go where they go and what they do. So, man, thank you so much. And again, Brett, thank you for coming on the show, and congratulations on your new position. And we can't wait to learn more about what y'all have been doing over the next several months, and then talking about some of these birds and what your findings are.
Well, thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again. All
right, awesome. And if anybody out there, if you are new to duck hunting or whatever like that, there's a lot of resources you can look up on the AGFC website. They provide a lot of public information, especially like their WMAs and things like that. All the resources you need. AGFC does a great job of providing that information for hunters, but you just got to do something other than go on a group and go on Facebook and go, how do I hunt in Arkansas? There's a lot of great information there. And again, thanks for taking time today with us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I ought to slow down, standing in the pouring rain.